Duncan, I guess for your final thoughts, like where would you rate this, honestly? Because when I look
Yeah.
at all these like great film lists, it never makes it.
No, I was going to
It
say
never
that
makes
that
the
was going
top
to be
100.
my final thought was I actually, including myself, I think this is one of the most universally underrated movies of all time. Like, as I said, I just remembered it was like a good movie from the 90s with like a really good cast, but I never remembered like how good the plot was or how well it all hangs together. I actually do think this is like, yeah, I've never seen this on anyone's top X list of movies. Or in fact, the joke is even people who are like buffs of movies, I never hear them reference this film. I think it's almost like slipped between the cracks, which is insane when you consider the cast it has. Like, the joke is I actually like most of the main actors in this movie. They've done brilliant work, so I think it's mega forgotten, mate. Like, I thought that it's like I said, I actually thought this movie was excellent when I went back and watched it. I think this and Chinatown are two of the absolute best movies we've done so far. Like, those really do stand up as like true classics.
Yeah, I think this film has just aged so fucking well too, especially in the context of film noir, because you're not really gonna name another film noir movie, like a period piece from the 30s, 40s, 50s that came out since this movie that anyone gives a shit about. Really, right? I can't think of one. Can you guys think of any since 1997?
No, nothing big anyway. No.
That's why I think this is like, this is like it feels like this movie is just the logical end result of 50 years of film noir, right? And we do get film noir in other ways. So for example, I mean, this is technically neo-noir because it's not from, the 30s, 40s, 50s era. But we do get film noir tropes used in other places. So like we got Sin City, right? Which is I really enjoy Sin City.
Actually a homage as well to film noir.
Exactly. But it's not like, I think, distinctly set within that time period, or it's kind of a fantasy world, so it's a little bit different. And it feels a lot more modern in many ways. And we get more modern, tropes in movies set in the modern day or science fiction. Like, obviously it happened before this, but Blade Runner is like the famous example, right? So we do get some of that, but this just feels like it would be very difficult to make a better movie set in the period than this one, because all roads just converge at LA Confidential, and you're like, well, they did everything about California. And like I said at the start of this, it was corrupt cops, drugs, prostitutes, Hollywood. It's just all jammed. The redemptive cop, right? The fight against institutional power, the layer cake of corruption. It's
like Richard said, it is just like a love letter to film noir. Also, by the way, I don't know this, but I'm going to assume the director must be a massive fan of Chinatown. This films that you also love that movie too.
Yeah. So, and it pulls from all of the other films that we've done in this film noir series. So for me, it's like, this is the film noir endgame. And I don't know how you do something that is better or more complete
no film
than
movie
this.
Can escape the event horizon of this one. I agree. I actually think they did just nail every like key aspect. And like I say, the other thing you can't do now, because they've done it, is they took everything to 11. Like all the violence and the drugs and the depravity, and it's all at 11. Like, what more could you do? Like, there's another thing, by the way. It's actually, even though normally, like, I'm used to a lot of movies that have got violence in, because it's in that 40s setting and the film noir sort of like expectations, it is fucking shocking when you see that, like, all those bodies piled up in that fucking room that's been shot and stuff. Or you see people just point blank getting shot in the face and stuff. Like, somehow your expectations, because of all those film noir movies, you're trained to think that'll never happen. Like, no one's actually just going to punch a woman in the face. That's just implied with like a slap or something. Like, again, I don't know how you could go further than this without making it almost over the top and ridiculous at that point in time.
Yeah, and despite that, I never think it's gratuitous. I really...
It pushes the line. It's like right on the line. I mean, Sin City is gratuitous, right? That's the fantasy version of this.
Exactly. I think you have to, with the violence, it's like it's genuinely shocking when it's there, but it's also essential to kind of show the consequences of this is what happens. This is what police people find. This is like that, as you say, that scene when he goes to the Night Owl cafe and he's just walking in and sort of surveying the carnage, and then finds the bodies. It's awful. Like, it really is like holy shit, like this is bad, bad. And then obviously the violence towards women, and the racial component in the film, addressing sensibilities of the time, and essentially how the vulnerable people in society are abused by institutions, journalism, movies, the police force. Yeah, there's a lot of powerful messaging in this film, and I think the violence showing the aftermath of these things is like important for that message to kind of like resonate. But
By the way,
yeah,
that was one thing I'll just throw in quickly. Is one thing that I also did realize watching this movie, particularly, even more so than Chinatown, is actually now when you think back on films like The Maltese Falcon, they are insanely conspicuous from the Hays Code for like they don't really show any of those things. Like we're supposed to believe this is a really seedy, corrupt world and these guys are evil and dangerous, but you never see it. It's never on screen. Like dangerous in one of those movies is you point a gun at someone or you slap them or they get knocked out in a comical match. It's never really like this. Like you're saying, you see the consequences of what like hyper violence would be like, or street criminals, or like a dirty drug bust gone wrong. Like you actually see the real like tangible aspects of it. So it actually in some ways makes like the earlier movies seem quite restrictive as they were. Like those movies are just like teasing or inferring some of this is going. Like you said earlier, like if you go back and watch the Maltese Falcon now, they're absolutely implying things like prostitution, and in obviously in Touch of Evil, it's even implied they like gang rape. They just make it so light how they imply it. Like again, you don't really have to face like the reality of what that would have been like. You just see a woman like a bit drowsy from the weed main line or whatever it was she had. Like it would be very different if she actually was like someone who's like a traumatic victim of like actual rape, and you'd seen like the beginnings of a scene, someone closing a door and going, that would have added like an extra punch to the story. So that's the other reason why to me this is like you can't go beyond this. Like they took everything to the end point.
And I think you can take these tropes and do other things. Like I think there is a world where we do like a sci-fi noir, where we do Blade Runner, or we do 12 Monkeys and Minority Report and Ghost in the Shell, and these are all films that draw heavily from film noir tropes. It's just this period feels like it's completely mined out after this movie, at least in film, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. We're getting some good noir style movies again. It's coming back around, and there's been some very good modern examples of noir and noir tropes kind of coming back into storytelling, which I'm super psyched about because we are getting very. I want to say I know it's probably like fucking 15 years old now, but like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was kind of like
I just watched that again recently.
yeah it's so good, right? That kind of set it off, but anyway, just final thoughts about this film. Almost like the noir genre itself, this is a bizarrely forgotten gem. It is such a good film. It was cruelly, in my opinion, I mean, like, get this, that in a year where the best leading actor had Matt Damon nominated, not one of the cast members of LA Confidential, the leading guys, not one of them got put on the list.
Holy shit, none
Crazy.
of them.
Nope. Jack Nicholson didn't get won for As Good as It
Jack
Gets.
Nicholson won. Yeah. Obviously, we get the best supporting actress for Kim Basinger. That's like fantastic. Minnie Driver was again, Good Will Hunting. This is what I mean. It's like Academy Awards fucking suck, guys. Like, because this is the year Titanic cleans up. This is the year that fucking Good Will Hunting gets loads of nods. And it's like, you know what? This is the year LA Confidential and Boogie Nights were released. Like, those two films should have cleaned the fuck up at the Oscars if it was really about great movies. I will say, as I said, it is a forgotten classic. It is a film that will surprise you in how good it is, especially if you're going in blind. And honestly, the high watermark for a lot of people's careers, Curtis Hanson. Certainly. It's just incredible to me to think that this film, as good as it is, just sort of sits on an island by itself. Like the end point of noir as a genre that nobody talks about or watches anymore. Yeah, it's staggering. But
when you do that thing where you say like no one remembers this one. Or everyone normally when you do that, a million people go, I don't. Everyone does on this one. I've no joke. I've almost never heard this even referenced in the last 30, 40 years of foreign films.
It's like if we were being honest and compiling like sort of 100 best movies, this probably should be on there.
Yes.
Yes. And that's a hell of an accolade, for any film. It's a wonderful movie. It rewards repeat viewings, fantastic performances, subtlety, razor sharp script, and what I think best of all about the film, final point, is it forces the audience to raise their game. It doesn't treat you like a moron, like most movies do. You have to sit down and pay attention, and that's what good rewarding cinema should demand of you as a viewer. So this film is fucking 10 out of 10, mega movie. You're not going to regret watching it.
And with that, now we'll watch Face Off.
Maybe a 10 out of 10 for different reasons. Who knows?
It is a 10 out of 10, but just because of it's a 10 out of 10 on the unapologetic fun meter.
Yeah. The tonal whiplash for this is going to be interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. That movie will be, if you guys haven't seen Face Off, it has one of the dumbest possible premises you could ever think of for a movie, and yet somehow manages to deliver vastly harder than you could possibly guess. It's a really, it's another one that aged very well because of how terrible it is.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.